and heart problems.
Yeah. And I suppose what's the main danger for bonobos right now? Is it human encroachment? Is it rainforest deforestation? Is it well, I suppose you've got that constant danger, haven't you, of bushmeat and so on. So is that there? Can you give me a sort of background on what their numbers are and the threat that they're under?
I mean, it's difficult to say because they live in a really wild. I mean, they live in one of the most wild parts of Africa. Yeah. I mean, the Congo Basin is still, in some ways, one benefit of political instability is it hasn't had a huge amount of infrastructure put into it yet. Yeah. So we don't have necessarily perfect estimates of the population, but we do know that it's massively decreasing. Yeah. And we know that humans are the main threat in our various forms to bonobos, as they are for many animals in that forest. And the main threats are going to be bushmeat trade is primarily one of the main ones, which is coupled with the pet trade. Mm-hmm. And we actually find increases of that now, really? Potentially due to the involvement of foreign countries in building the infrastructure, but also profiting from mining and material extraction in Congo. We have this trade that's happening, and it's very, very serious. And it's actually really, really, it's not getting better. It's probably getting worse. Yeah. And so there's the bushmeat and pet trades, and then there's deforestation, which is obviously a big thing. And palm oil is an increasing threat now.
Really?
To
palm oil in Congo, really? Yeah.
Yeah. It's coming. It's still more in the Southeast Asia now, but it will come progressively. Yeah. And then obviously there's huge due to the political instability of Congo, there's been big migration and movement of people, and that's reduced the stability of the population. So, for example, things like taboos, which have typically been in place against eating bonobos because they're so close to us. Many village people have had taboos against eating them. Those taboos are starting to degrade as a result of changes in instability as a result of war and so on. So there's many factors, and they all contribute. There's a lot of attention now towards Congo for its minerals and its material richness, and their habitat is very much part of that area. And then in terms of numbers, well, we think. We estimate that, maybe 50 years ago there was, say, 100,000 bonobos, and we think now it's difficult to say, but maybe between 15 and 25,000. Really? And the really shocking statistic is based on current models of decline. It's estimated that there's 3 generations left in the wild of bonobos. So that's approximately 75 years, 25 years per generation. And that's been modelled on current rates of decline. So unless something happens, unless there's a huge shift, possibly within the lifetime of, people's grandchildren, there will not be any wild bonobos left.
Oh, that's quite a shock, isn't it? How does the behaviour change? So when you have, for instance, some bonobos that have been rescued from poachers, mm-hmm. and they're taken in for some form of rehabilitation, and so they have that kind of human contact, I suppose. When they're put back into the wild, mm-hmm. How does their behaviour change in comparison with the bonobos that have remained in the wild? I mean, when they meet, are there any changes in behaviour?
Really nice question. I mean, it's difficult to say because we don't have that much data on that yet. But so I mean, the sanctuary, I work in association with a sanctuary which rescues orphans from the bushmeat trade.
Which is where?
And I mean, they arrive in a very traumatised state. I mean, they've been literally at the hands of murderers. I mean, like these individuals, their mothers are all dead as a result of human poaching, and they've had really dreadful experiences before they've arrived and been rescued. Yeah. They've been malnourished, chained up, abused, and so on. So they arrive really traumatised and struggling mentally and physically. Yeah. But what we find is that they're really rather resilient, and actually, with enough love and care, they can show quite a profound improvement, given the right kind of care and love.
Yeah.
So the sanctuaries play a really important role in that rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Lola Ya Bonobo is the only sanctuary that does that with bonobos, and to the extent that they've actually now been able to release some of these orphans back into the wild, despite this difficulty. They have been successful in the rehabilitation to the point that they think they're actually good candidates for reintroduction. And what's really impressive is that these individuals are succeeding in their reintroduction. So they're actually now, they reintroduced two groups in 2011 and 12. And they're still there in the forest, and they're doing really very well. I mean, they've actually adapted better than we'd hoped. Now, as far as we know, they haven't met any wild bonobos yet. But I think they've now been there long enough that I think they're kind of pretty much living wild bonobo lives. They're not. Yeah. They are still interested in humans. So they spend more time nearer the river where they have contact with humans. Yeah. They are still, because they've spent their life at a sanctuary, they kind of used to being fed by humans. Although they're not being fed anymore, they're not being supplemented. Yeah. I think that relationship is difficult to shrug off.
Sure.
But the benefit is they're reproducing, and their offspring have been born in the wild. And so within a generation or two, I think they're going to be essentially wild apes again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's wonderful work. It must be just fascinating because it's an ongoing process. All this, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're planning to release 15 more this year, hopefully.
Fantastic.
So the next challenge is going to be how these two, the kind of now wild reintroduced apes, are going to engage with the apes that have arrived from the sanctuary they're going to be added to the forest. Yeah. And that's going to be really interesting because some of them know each other from the past. Yeah. So they're going to kind of, remember their former selves in a way. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I mean, they don't forget each other. So
and when will you next be going out?
Well, if all goes to plan and the reintroduction happens, I'll go in July.
Great.
Yeah. So it's just the flexibility of these apes is remarkable. I mean, they can adapt to all sorts of things. The fact that these guys are now, essentially living out in the wild and they have such unusual backgrounds, to me, it's just a testament to their cognitive sophistication. It's amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. When did you first go? When was your first trip?
The first time I went was 2008. So, about 10 years ago now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I've met along the way, I've probably met, about 200 bonobos or something. Yeah. So I've known a lot of individual characters. I mean, they're like my colleagues.
Yeah.
And so it's one of the
with
really
different characters. I suppose you. Yeah.
Well, it's to come back and see them growing up. So some of them, I've seen them since. People get excited when they see kids growing up, but I mean, seeing apes growing up is, it's really wonderful. And I love, returning and being like, oh, now you're in the wild, and it's like some of them I knew have been released, and that's really that's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I've written down a couple of things here, but I wanted to ask you about was the fission fusion. And that's I suppose that's the way of the bonobos sort of communicating with each other through the hunting and so on, isn't it? What is fission fusion really?
Yeah, so fission fusion is essentially what it's basically what we partially do most of the time. So fission fusion means that they have a big community that they know, everybody in the community they know, but they split into subgroups continually, and they reform based around foraging decisions, based around travel, individuals that are getting along well, and so they go into small groups, and they may remain in that small group for a couple of hours, for a couple of days, for a couple of weeks. It can vary according to what food is available, but they will meet other groups, and sometimes it's rare for the entire community to all be there together. It does happen, If there's a really good feeding period, then the whole community will come back together. But typically, they're keeping track of social relationships, but they're not necessarily all uniting in one group.
Right.
So it's like what you do if you, for example, you might be at like a family reunion. You'll all be there and you know each other, but you'll go into your subgroups and like maybe some of you will go and spend time at one table and then you'll meet the others. That's essentially what they're doing in the forest, and we know that it puts a lot of cognitive it's quite cognitively demanding because they need to know everyone, they need to remember where everyone is, they need to remember their last encounter with someone. They have to keep track of relationships, and they also have to know that relationships can change when they're not there.
And sex forms a big part of this kind of bonding, doesn't it?
Yeah, so sex is part. Yeah. So when they meet, bonobos will have. I'm just aware of the time. I'm gonna have to go in like 2 minutes, I'm afraid. Sex and bonobos is a really social tool.
Yeah.
And but that is a really important part of their. It's not just a product of captivity. I mean, the wild bonobos still have lots of sexual contact.
Yeah.
And sex is sort of like a social glue. So it provides them a sort of very quick and pretty efficient way to resolve conflict, to make friends quickly, to kind of express how they're feeling about each other, to basically it's mostly to do with sort of tension and apprehension of conflict.
And it
so
obviously works.
When they have a reunion, they often have sex, because I think that's a period of uncertainty, and sex is a really quick way for them just to kind of figure out like that dynamic.
Absolutely. How can we help? How do people help? I mean, obviously supporting some of the places that you're working in when you go to the Congo, presumably. So where are a couple of places that people should check out?
Yeah, so the sanctuary, Lola Bonobo Sanctuary, does really brilliant work. They don't only do like rehabilitation of orphans, they do the reintroduction, they do a lot of community projects with Congolese people, they have a lot of education, they have a lot of outreach, they do a real kind of suite of different activities, and they're like hand on heart, like a very, very credible organisation. So you can make donations to the sanctuary, and we have a site called bonobosuk.org.
Great.
And you can also, it's bonobosuk.org, and you can also adopt a bonobo there. And so if you want to adopt, you can get like a regular update of how they're doing, and that means that you're basically contributing to the support of these orphans. And there's also other charities that do work. So, for example, the WWF have projects there. There's another one called Bonobo in Congo, which is doing a lot of work, sort of more with the wild kind of forest areas. And I have to double check the website actually what the name is.
But that's good.
But the Bonobo Sanctuary is a good place to start because they're doing a whole lot of different projects, and it's all for the benefit not only of the bonobos but the people
of the local
and then
communities.
Finally, people can just be good ambassadors of. When somebody gives you a birthday card with a grinning ape on it, explain to them that actually that's probably a captive ape that's being forced to make a fear grimace. Like, there's ways to educate your friends and colleagues and loved ones about the importance of apes and why we need to protect them. And I think that can all help.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zana. That's very kind of you to